Good evening, guys. Good evening. Welcome to our final live session of the Confident Home Herbalist Week. I can't believe it's kind of coming to an end. It feels like yesterday we were kicking off a week and a half ago now since we started. Sunday before last, session one. It feels like yesterday to me. I'm sure it feels longer for you guys, but it feels like a blink of an eye. Since we started this kind of herbal journey together, final live session tonight, and it's a fundamentally important one. We've kept perhaps one of the most practically relevant sessions till last. Okay, particularly if I think about it in my household, it's probably where reactive home herbalism is played out the most, and it's all about herbal painkillers. Okay. So like I said, this is the final live session of the Confident Home Herbalist. As I've said, every session we've had together, before I dive into the content, if everyone could just give me a barrage of smiley faces, emojis, thumbs up, just to help get the video to the top of the feed. Last time you'll hear me say that for a while. I'm sure everyone will be pleased to know. So this is the final live session. Before we close down the Confident Home Herbalist Week at tomorrow evening. Okay, so this whole thing ends 10 p.m. tomorrow evening. A massive welcome to everyone who's joined the Master Home Herbalist. Okay, we've had such a phenomenal response to that. I've had hundreds of people sign up, which is an absolute privilege to continue that journey with you, particularly in the live sessions of the 4-week course that comes with it, the free course. For those of you who are thinking of joining, you've got about just over 24 hours. Okay, the doors will close at 10 p.m. tomorrow evening. Okay, but tonight talking about herbal painkillers. Okay, and when I was designing, this week, when I was designing the Confident Home Herbalist Week, when I was thinking about the things I wanted to talk about and the bonus sessions, and it was always ringing in my brain that I couldn't really run this week without talking about painkillers. Okay, herbal painkillers. Because what's the whole remit? What's been the whole motivation for this week? It's been about cultivating confidence in home herbalism. It's been about, empowering this mindset that when common household ailments strike, there is someone in your home, probably you because you're watching, who has the knowledge, the confidence, the competence, the resources, the ability to say, I can treat that headache, I can treat that constipation, I can treat those chilblains, I can treat that infection. The whole remit of this week has been about empowering the ability to keep our households healthy with herbs and treat our household when they get sick, as they invariably will, okay, mine included. And if we're basing that model on practical real life settings, what are the most common problems that we know from the public health data that are experienced in homes? Okay, what are those common problems experienced in homes? Infections and pain conditions. Okay, and those two things are obviously interlinked because infections come with pain. So they're in many ways one and the same, but pain in terms of, menstrual cramps, sports injuries, arthritis, rheumatic pain, muscular pain, tension headaches, backache, sciatica, the full gamut of pain-based conditions. Okay, anything that you would turn to Nurofen or aspirin or paracetamol for. They are the most common household ailments by a long way. That's what the public health data shows us and tells us. And I'm sure if you look at your household over any given year, particularly if you've got kids or you're involved with grandkids, how often painkillers come out. Headache. Think how common headaches are. Think how common backache is. Menstrual cramps. All of these kinds of things are so common. And in my experience, and I have kind of trialed and tested and modified and tweaked so many different types of herbal painkillers over the years, trying to work out what's easiest, what actually works best, not just from the research. The research is important, but actually how does it play out in my life, in my family's life, my friends' life? If I prescribe or give herbal painkillers, which one reliably works the most effectively? Okay, and in my experience of doing that, I was trying to put a figure on it today, and I was musing about this, and I would say over the last however many years, I think that you are able to reduce your usage of over-the-counter painkillers by 70%, if I had to put a finger on it. Okay, whatever volume of painkillers you use over a year, I think you can reduce that by 60 to 70% by using herbal equivalents. Okay, and that is not a small thing. And the reason I've got a real bee in my bonnet about over-the-counter painkillers is not that I'm anti, pharmaceuticals. I'm not anti conventional medicine. I'm not anti, conventional painkillers in any way, shape, or form. But what does worry me is that we know from the research that over-the-counter painkillers, particularly Nurofen, is not being used in the way it was designed to be used or licensed to be used. Okay, the public health data tells us that over-the-counter painkillers, particularly the non-steroidal anti-inflammatories like ibuprofen, Nurofen, are being used way too often for way too long at a way higher dose than they're designed to be. When the licensing for these painkillers was given out, it specifically says for the short-term management of acute ailments. Okay, you've got really bad, an arthritic flare-up. You've pulled something in your back and you're really stiff. You've got really bad menstrual cramps. You've got a really bad headache. 2 days, 1 to 2 days, really is what we want to be using these over-the-counter painkillers for. But we know that people typically, when they use them for a given issue, will typically use them for an average of 4 to 6 days, which is a phenomenal period of time to be using these kinds of medicines. Okay, and we're using them more often as well. We're using them way more often than we should be, and this comes with significant risk, a risk that not a lot of people are aware of. So, for example, just 2,000 milligrams a day of a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory like Nurofen poses a clinically significant level of toxic risk to the liver. Okay, very hard for the liver to break it down. It accumulates and creates liver toxicity. You do that 2, 3, 4 days in a row, 4, 5, 6 times a year, it's damaging. Okay, we know that these painkillers cause significant gastric problems. They cause gastritis. They cause ulcers. They cause malabsorption. They affect the lining of the gut. They affect the microbiome in the gut. They're linked to things like ulcerative colitis. The list goes on. Okay, there are a litany of risks that are associated with the improper use of over-the-counter painkillers, and we know that probably somewhere between 50 and 70% of people are using painkillers improperly, okay, in a way they're not designed to be used, in terms of the dose they're using, how often they're using it for, and how often they're using them, and how long they're using them for in terms of duration. Okay, and I've seen that play out thousands of times, particularly in the clinical research, because people with cancer obviously use painkillers quite a lot, and I've seen when we were running big trials with hundreds and hundreds of people with prostate cancer and ovarian cancer, you see the side effects of these painkillers kicking in again and again and again. And one of the really big motivations that I have when I'm talking about herbal medicines is empowering people with the knowledge to how you can manage pain in a safe, evidence-based, proven way using herbal equivalents. And there are lots of herbs that we can turn to here. So I'm not talking about these tonight, but other options, herbs like boswellia, okay, which is often called Indian frankincense, okay, myrrh, okay, very, very good. Calendula, okay, but boswellia particularly, boswellia is clinically proven as a replacement for ibuprofen, particularly for musculoskeletal pain. Okay, actually, there's something called dumpana, which is where you can burn incense resin, and if you inhale it, because it enters the blood more quickly, has a much faster pain-killing action. Okay, again, those of you who've joined the Master Home Herbalist, I can see lots of names here who have. look at all the pain conditions in there, and look at the herb profiles. You'll see all this information. Okay, but so empowering home herbalism with a specific capacity to treat pain conditions is always going to be a kind of a top priority in the overarching framework of home herbalism, because it's something we're going to be using again and again and again. Okay, and in that context, there is unequivocally one herb that reigns supreme. Okay, without exception, in terms of the published research, in terms of the biochemistry research, in terms of the clinical mechanisms, and I think most importantly, anecdotally, I've seen every bone in my body would put my name to the effectiveness of this herb. Okay, because I've used it all the time. I use it regularly. After I broke my wrist really badly a few years ago, in the middle of deepest, darkest Spain, a really remote region of Spain, and it got set really badly in a tiny kind of, it wasn't even a hospital, it was just a clinic, and it was set badly, and the bone is sticking out. The end of the bone is not where it should be, and if I bike too much or exercise too much or use the gym too much, it really flares up into like rheumatic pain. And this is the first herb I turn to, and it works wonders. What is it? The famous willow bark. Okay, some of you may have heard of it if you've had a bit of experience or wider reading around herbal medicine. It has a fascinating history. So originally, willow bark as a medicine, it's been used in Himalayan medicine, in particularly North American medicine. The Sioux Nation have a long history of use. But in terms of the systematic study, there was a Church of England vicar in the 15th century who was also acting as kind of the village clinician, herbalist. And when he was treating pain conditions, there was all kinds of different, local remedies and old wives' tales, and, witchcraft was still, alive and well then. But he noticed a distinct difference, which was when people used willow bark, they had a consistently a clinically more significant response, a better response than any of the other medicines that were being used. So then he eradicated and said, just for a 6-month period, let's do away with all of the other remedies and tonics that we as a community use, and let's just use willow bark and see if we can see what happens. And the success rate was exponential. And he was convinced that he'd found nature's panacea for pain, and he used that, and that was propagated in British folklore and folk medicine, all the way through the centuries. Then a visiting French pharmacist learnt of it and took it back, began studying it in his university in Paris, and he isolated something called salicin. Okay, salicin, which is a chemical found in massive concentrations in willow bark, particularly white willow bark. Okay, he isolated salicin as what allowed willow bark to kill pain. Okay, but what he didn't know was that he found the formation of aspirin. Okay, so aspirin is made from something called salicylic acid, which comes from what? Salicin, which comes from what? Willow bark. So willow bark has the same biochemical pathway in the body as aspirin, and it blocks the same pain pathways in the body as ibuprofen. Okay, so when these early British and French herbalists were doing these very crude social experiments into painkiller, what they actually found was aspirin. Okay, and they found it in a tree medicine. Okay, and there's about 100 different types of willow trees. White willow has the highest concentration of salicin. So medically speaking, in terms of the clinical trials and clinical research, it's white willow bark that is usually used. Okay, like I said in my Facebook post, this isn't forest. This is from Baldwin's. I bought this, okay, because it's slightly finer. It's slightly easier to use. But willow grows. It's endemic. It's prolific. It grows. You're probably, unless you're in the middle of a city, you're probably not that far from a willow tree. Okay, and you can forage for it. You can peel the bark. You can if you kind of cut off a few lengths of willow branches that are about a finger width in girth, you'll probably get about a quarter of that much of willow bark. Okay, and what I'll do, I'll upload a willow herb profile to the resources page, which will allow you to, it gives all the instructions for foraging, etc, etc. Okay, so those of you who want to forage, okay, because it's available 12 months of the year. So why is the salicin so important? The beauty of salicin is that it's a very broad ranging painkiller. Okay, it's an analgesic. Okay, so it's clinically proven to dial down the pain mechanisms in the body. It kills pain. Okay, it reduces the severity of pain, it reduces the intensity of pain. So when you're suffering with that really bad headache, or tension, or sciatic pain, or arthritic pain, or menstrual cramps, or flu body aches, it's going to dial down the severity of that pain. It's going to kill the pain. But it's also a very powerful anti-inflammatory, and this is what makes it so powerful, because aspirin is brilliant for pain killing, ibuprofen is brilliant for reducing inflammation, okay, but salicylic acid does both. So it reduces pain, it makes us feel better, but it's actually dialing down the inflammatory response, and the inflammatory response is actually what's propagating the pain in the first place. There's something called COX and LOX, COX and LOX, which stands for cyclooxygenase and lipooxygenase, and they're the main pain pathways in the body. If you've ever suffered pain, it's LOX and COX that facilitate the pain. We know that willow bark blocks those chemicals, they block those mechanisms, so they reduce the inflammation that causes the pain, and they reduce our experience of the pain. So it's kind of interventional and curative, okay, so which is the best of all worlds. And it's also antipyretic, okay, another herbal term. Okay, again, those of you who've joined the Master Home Herbalist, there's a whole section on herbal terminology. An antipyretic is a herb that lowers fevers, it breaks fevers. Okay, and this is obviously what aspirin excels at. If you've got a temperature, 39, 40, 41 degrees, you don't always want to get rid of a temperature, because that's the body's way of obviously destroying infections, but sometimes you have to. Willow bark is a clinically proven antipyretic, so it breaks fevers. Okay, so it's because of that, the indications for using willow bark are extensive. Okay, so essentially, whenever there's pain and or inflammation anywhere in the body, willow bark has a natural affinity for, is clinically indicated for, and that goes from the top of the head, eye strain, headaches, earaches, dental pain, toothache, neuralgic pain, that trigeminal neuralgia. Anyone here had trigeminal neuralgia? Awful crippling nerve pain down the face, tension, tension headaches, tension in the shoulders and jaw, backaches, sciatic pain, nerve pain, muscle pain, repetitive strain injuries, the list goes on. Okay, so the indications, the applications of willow bark are extensive, and those of you who joined the the session on last Thursday, when we looked at herbal baths, okay, you can use willow bark to make herbal baths. So that's particularly good for muscle pain and skeletal pain. So you're actually submerging your body in the pain-killing properties. So if you missed that session, it was session 5. Okay, live session 5, herbal baths. You can use those instructions to make a willow bark bath. Okay, so it's phenomenally effective. And like I say, I'd be lying, and it wouldn't be sincere of me to say that because of willow bark I never use synthetic painkillers. Okay, that's absolutely not true. Okay, I do, we have Nurofen in the house. I've used Nurofen, certainly, and there's no issue with using that. But what I think makes willow bark so profound is it reduces how often I use it, and it reduces how long I have to use it for, and it reduces the dose at which I do use it, because you can use both of these at the same time. Okay, so, and also willow bark there's lots of other benefits to willow bark, but interestingly, so building upon the it wasn't in the Confident Home Herbalist, was it? So the Himalayan Heart session that I ran on Tuesday, which is part of the Master Home Herbalist. We spoke about heart health. Willow bark. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about taking a baby aspirin. If you use a small half aspirin every day, it's linked to better cardiovascular health, lower rates of strokes and heart attacks. That evidence is pretty compelling. Why? Because it thins the blood. Okay, willow bark does exactly the same thing. Okay, so it helps to thin the blood, which prevents clots, prevents plaque formation, reduces the risks of strokes. And in traditional French, southern France, around Aquitaine, Toulouse, Toulon, one of the real hotbeds of herbal medicine in Europe, willow bark is one of the most important cardiovascular prophylaxes, herbs that reduce the risk of heart disease. So just 1 cup of willow bark, using willow bark regularly, couple of cups, 3-4 cups every week, every other day, it's just going to help keep the blood and keep the heart working really strongly. Okay, it's great for reproductive pain, menstrual pain, things like that. So but there is some very, very, very important safety information to be aware of with this. All of the herbs we've covered over the duration of this week have an exceptional safety profile, very, very low side effect profile. I've never really come across people having problems with them. Rhodiola, ashwagandha, turmeric, the honey, the 4-Thieves vinegar, don't really see problems with them. Okay, this is different. Okay, it's incredibly safe unless it's not. And the situations where you cannot use this, okay, if you're on blood thinners, if you're on warfarin or something like that, a blood thinner, and you add in willow bark, it's going to thin the blood too much, okay, then you risk kind of bleeding disorders. Likewise, if you have bleeding disorders, if you have any kind of bleeding disorder, don't take willow bark, okay. You can't use willow bark in under 18s, okay. You can't use willow bark in under 18s because it can be toxic because of the way it builds up in certain organs in that age group. Okay, so for under 18s, there are other pain-killing options. Okay, but don't use willow bark in under 18s, and don't use willow bark if you're pregnant or if you're breastfeeding. Okay, because it's gonna, not because there's nothing to show that it's dangerous, but there's nothing to show that it's safe either. Because it has a blood thinning impact, that's going to affect obviously the baby. Okay, so blood thinning medications, bleeding disorders, under 18s, pregnant, breastfeeding. Okay, 4 absolute contraindications that you have to be aware of. But other than that, it's incredibly safe. I've used this, I've prescribed this so many, what I think I said on the very first session we had, one of my passions and missions for home herbalism is that every house has a home herbalist, or every street or village, so that someone can say, this happens to my house all the time, and it's one of my biggest privileges, having our neighbours in our street knocking on our door all hours saying, my husband's got a really bad swollen ankle, or my daughter's got bad menstrual pains, or my son can't sleep, and prescribing home herbalism from the front door. Okay, I love that. It's such a classically kind of French, Spanish model, the village herbalist. I love that idea of being a centre where people can come to for help, and I'll do that until my dying day. I love it. I love providing that service, obviously for free. And hopefully you guys can do that. And one of the things that people knock on our door for the most is what? Pain conditions. Because it's the same for most people. And we have big bags of this. We always have it in so we can prescribe it. And I wouldn't say it's weekly, but it's regularly. We prescribe this on the front door to people who've got pain conditions, whatever it may be. So it's a really important one. In terms of using it, you can buy it in capsules and tinctures and this, that and the other, but very strong herbal teas are absolutely the best way of making use of willow bark, because the salicin that makes it effective transfers into water very effectively. Okay, it's water soluble, it transfers across. But you want it strong, so typically you wouldn't use an infusion. Okay, so there are 2 types of herbal teas: herbal infusions and herbal decoctions. Herbal infusions are where you put the herb into a cup and pour over boiling water. A decoction is where you put the herb into a saucepan, pour over boiling water, and then simmer it. And that makes it much stronger. because this is quite woody and tough, you want to ideally decoct it. Okay, so and if you're going to decoct it, it makes sense to make a bigger batch, you know, 3, 4, 5 cupfuls. And then you make a big batch in the morning, pour it into a flask, and you can just kind of sip it all day. One, you know, cup here, cup there, cup there. So you're kind of flooding the body with it over the duration of the day. And for pain, managing pain, it is truly transformative. Okay, so what I'll do, I won't go through the kind of the ratios and instructions for making that. I'll just post them up. Okay, so on the resources page tomorrow, the last set of content to go up there will be the infusion instructions and a herb profile for willow bark. Okay, and if you have any questions about that, like I say, for some unknown reason Facebook doesn't show me the comments. If you have asked a question, I will answer it this evening or tomorrow about how to use this. Okay, but then other than that, I just to wrap up, just want to say a massive genuinely heartfelt thank you. Now this is the last live session. You know, the numbers we've had, you know, we had over 130 people in every one of the first 5 in the main sessions. We've had 70-80 people in each of the bonus sessions, which just amazes me. I'm so grateful for all of your time. I'm so grateful for all of your energy. I'm so grateful for you showing up, posting your photos, taking the time to make the remedies. This stuff only works if you make it. And to see so many people going out, getting the ingredients, making the remedies, throwing themselves in feet first, it just inspires me so much. So what makes these weeks effective is you guys, okay, and showing up and committing. And I say this all the time, but I just cannot tell you how much it means to me and how grateful I am. So a massive thank you. Those who want to continue the journey, like I said at the start, the doors to the Master Home Herbalist, including the access to the 2 free courses, the live 4-week course, Herbal Vitality and Health in Middle Age and Beyond, and the 4-part Cold and Flu Masterclass, plus the Master Home Herbalist, the whole bundle. Doors are open for another 24 hours. Okay, they close at 10 p.m. tomorrow. Okay, so if you're looking to continue the journey, if you're looking to master home herbalism, the doors close tomorrow. Okay, so I'd love to continue the journey with you. For those of you who have joined, I can't wait to see you next week for the next live session. And we'll go from there. So I've still got a few more things to share tomorrow on the Facebook page. So keep your eyes peeled, but have a lovely rest of the evening, and I will see you all soon. Cheers, guys.